The real ancient Rome wasn't just about battles. It was wild, deeply erotic, and brutally lawless. Modern Hollywood sells us a sanitized PG-13 fairy tale painted on a green screen. But the legendary epics of the 50s and 60s showed the empire exactly as it was, raw, flesh-bound, and completely unfiltered. Back then, censors allowed historical nudity and primitive cruelty that today's corporate studios wouldn't dare touch. I've gathered 10 of these brutal, uncensored masterpieces that you can watch right now for free on YouTube and Tubi. No subscriptions, no torrents, just massive, real-life coliseums and thousands of actual extras. One movie on this list almost completely bankrupted a major Hollywood studio due to its insane scale, and the title at number 7 features female gladiator matches so provocative you definitely can't watch it with your family around. Let's break them down before they get taken down. Number 10. The Slaves of Babylon, 1953. This classic epic, directed by the legendary showman William Castle, takes us straight into the heart of the ancient world's most brutal geopolitics. While the story primarily unfolds around the massive conflict between the Babylonian Empire and the enslaved Israelites, it is the exact blueprint for the sword-and-sandal genre that defined the 1950s. If you are looking for an unfiltered look at how Hollywood used to construct ancient history without a single pixel of CGI, this movie delivers in spades. The entire production relies on colossal, hand-built physical sets that create a powerful sense of architectural scale, capturing the heavy, intimidating atmosphere of ancient palaces and desert strongholds. The narrative tracks the desperate, high-stakes rebellion of enslaved people fighting for their freedom against a tyrannical, decadent regime. What makes this film perfect for a modern audience is its focus on the sheer mechanics of ancient warfare and captivity. The battle sequences are heavy and grounded, filled with real extras clashing with heavy bronze shields, spears, and massive wooden battering rams. There are no fast cuts or digital trickery to hide the action. Castle uses broad, sweeping angles to let the viewer absorb the chaotic kinetic energy of a physical crowd charging across the dusty terrain. The film trades polished modern cinematic safety for a rugged, theatrical texture where every stone, piece of armor, and drop of sweat feels incredibly tactile. It is a fascinating, fast-paced relic from an era when cinematic scale meant hiring thousands of real people to build a world from scratch. Number 9. The Sword and the Dragon, 1956. If you think early fantasy and historical epics were primitive, this masterpiece of practical filmmaking will completely change your mind. Directed by the legendary master of Soviet cinematic illusions, Alexander Pushko, this film is a colossal achievement that relies entirely on breathtaking practical effects, massive physical sets, and an absolute army of human extras. To capture the sheer, overwhelming scale of ancient warfare and nomadic invasions, the production utilized over 100,000 real soldiers from the Soviet military to act as extras in the battle scenes. When the enemy hordes appear on the horizon, it isn't a repeated digital texture, it is a literal sea of humanity stretching out to the edge of the frame. The story centers on the mythic warrior Ilya Muromets as he defends his homeland against the devastating raids of the Tugar hordes, a fictionalized, terrifying representation of steppe invaders. The film is packed with incredible imagery, including a massive three-headed fire-breathing dragon built entirely as a giant mechanical prop that required dozens of operators inside to control its movements and blast real flames across the set. The sheer physical craftsmanship on display is mind-blowing. What elevates this film into our selection of raw epics is its heavy, operatic atmosphere. The combat feels mythic, yet incredibly grounded by the weight of real armor and massive practical explosions. The film doesn't rely on quick edits to hide poor choreography. Instead, Pushko uses wide, sweeping shots to let the viewer absorb the staggering scale of the devastation. It is a stunning example of how grand visual storytelling used to be achieved through pure artistic ingenuity, massive budgets, and thousands of real people on a physical battlefield. Number 8. Carthage in Flames, 1959. This film captures the absolute zenith of the Italian sword-and-sandal golden age, delivering a brutal and uncompromising look at the final days of the Third Punic War. Directed by Carmine Gallone, this epic bypasses the typical clean, heroic Hollywood narrative of Rome and instead focuses on the sheer terror, geopolitical ruthlessness, and physical destruction that define the ancient world. There are no digital flames or green screen composite shots here. When you see a massive ancient city under siege, engulfed in a raging wall of fire, you are looking at colossal physical sets constructed out of wood and stone, loaded with real pyrotechnics and burned to the ground in front of a live camera crew. The plot weaves a tragic, multi-layered story of forbidden love, political betrayal, and shifting loyalties within the doomed city of Carthage as the Roman legions close their iron grip around its walls. What makes this movie a true standout for modern audiences is its unflinching depiction of total warfare. The battle sequences are remarkably heavy, visceral, and chaotic, featuring massive battering rams splintering physical gates, scaling ladders being thrown from high stone walls, and intense hand-to-hand combat utilizing real, heavy prop weaponry. Thousands of human extras fill the frame, creating a genuine sense of panic, claustrophobia, and overwhelming scale that digital duplication simply cannot replicate. Gallone handles the ultimate destruction of the city with a sense of grim, operatic gravity. The frame is constantly filled with smoke, falling debris, and the raw kinetic energy of hundreds of stuntmen engaging in complex, dangerous choreography. It stands as a powerful, beautifully shot testament to a bygone era of practical filmmaking, a movie that relies entirely on massive physical scale, high-stakes practical effects, and pure historical grit to leave a lasting, visceral impact. Number 7. The Arena, 1974. Stepping slightly into the early 1970s, this cult classic completely strips away the grand political nobility often associated with the Roman Empire and exposes its most exploitative, brutal, and carnal foundations. Directed by Steve Carver and produced by the legendary king of B-movies Roger Corman, this film is the exact title mentioned in our intro, a raw, unapologetic slice of exploitation cinema that takes a classic Gladiator formula and flips it on its head by focusing entirely on female combatants. It throws historical accuracy completely out the window in favor of pure, unadulterated exploitation, delivering a level of provocation that mainstream Hollywood. Number 7. The Arena, 1974. Stepping slightly into the early 1970s, this cult classic completely strips away the grand political nobility often associated with the Roman Empire and exposes its most exploitative, brutal, and carnal foundations. Directed by Steve Carver and produced by the legendary king of B-movies Roger Corman, this film is the exact title mentioned in our intro, a raw, unapologetic slice of exploitation cinema that takes a classic Gladiator formula and flips it on its head by focusing entirely on female combatants. It throws historical accuracy completely out the window in favor of pure, unadulterated exploitation, delivering a level of provocation that mainstream Hollywood would never dare touch today. The story follows a group of captured women from various corners of the conquered world, including a fierce Nubian fighter and a defiant Roman rebel, who are sold into slavery and forced to train as gladiators for the entertainment of a corrupt provincial governor. The film works perfectly as a high-intent bait because it leans heavily into the physical objectification and sexual undertones of ancient slavery, while simultaneously delivering surprisingly rough, grimy, and intense action sequences. The fights on the dusty arena floor are not polished or elegantly choreographed. They are desperate, sweaty, and violent scrambles for survival, involving daggers, tridents, and raw physical aggression. What keeps a viewer glued to the screen is the film's gritty, low-budget texturing and its complete lack of a moral filter. It doesn't hide behind a safe PG-13 wall of edits. It openly showcases the cruelty of the Roman ruling class and the desperation of those trapped beneath their sandals. It is loud, unapologetically trashy, and highly provocative, a fascinating cinematic artifact that perfectly illustrates just how far filmmakers were willing to push the boundaries of on-screen violence and nudity before modern corporate censorship took over. Number 6. The Two Gladiators, 1964. This Italian epic, directed by Mario Caiano, is an absolute masterclass in low-budget grit and high-stakes physical action. The film takes a deep dive into the chaotic and deadly transition of power following the death of Marcus Aurelius, zeroing in on the historic madness of his son, Commodus. Instead of the grand, clean marble halls often showcased in prestige Hollywood dramas, this production forces the viewer down into the sweat-stained, blood-soaked trenches of the gladiator barracks and the corrupt underbelly of the Roman slums. There are no digital crowd duplications or clean stunt doubles here. Every frame is packed with real physical friction, genuine weight, and heavy iron weapons slamming against massive wooden shields. The storyline centers on a fierce and hidden twin brother of Commodus, who was raised as a common gladiator and eventually gets drawn into a desperate, high-stakes conspiracy to overthrow his tyrannical brother. This narrative setup serves as the perfect excuse for a relentless parade of visceral, bone-crunching action sequences. The combat choreography is remarkably aggressive for 1964, favoring raw, heavy power moves over elegant theatrical swordplay. You see stuntmen taking massive, brutal tumbles down stone steps, real horses trampling through dusty arenas, and desperate hand-to-hand brawls, where fighters use everything from broken daggers to their bare fists to survive. Caiano does a brilliant job of capturing the pure kinetic energy of these clashes, using tight framing and wide panning shots that make the viewer feel the immediate danger of the arena floor. The film successfully strips away the majestic, mythic aura of Rome, replacing it with a cynical, gritty atmosphere where power is bought with gold and maintained through public bloodsport. It remains a stellar, highly entertaining example of mid-century practical filmmaking that delivers pure, unadulterated historical action from start to finish. Number 5. Revak the Rebel, 1960. Directed by Rudolph Maté, this incredibly rugged and overlooked epic offers a remarkably dark, survival-focused perspective on the absolute ruthlessness of the expanding Roman Empire. The film completely ignores the typical political subplots of the Roman Senate and instead focuses entirely on the tragic human cost of conquest, following an Iberian prince whose homeland is utterly destroyed by a brutal Roman fleet. The production value is massive and entirely physical. When you see ancient multi-decked warships colliding on the open water or burning coastal villages being raided, you're looking at colossal physical models, life-sized wooden ships, and hundreds of real extras throwing themselves into chaotic, highly dangerous stunts. The narrative tracks the captured prince, Revak, as he is stripped of his title, forced into brutal slavery, and forced to row on the agonizingly harsh lower decks of a Roman galley. This leads to a gritty, slow-burning story of absolute survival and deep-seated vengeance as he bides his time to spark a massive, bloody rebellion from within the empire's own ranks. What makes this film stand out for a modern audience is this incredibly grimy, authentic texture. The slave quarters, the grimy harbor towns, and the remote military outposts feel heavy, dirty, and thoroughly lived in. The action shifts from tense, claustrophobic skirmishes below deck to sprawling, chaotic rebel raids on land. Maté utilizes his extensive background as a premier cinematographer to give the violence a sharp, highly dramatic edge, highlighting the raw contrast between the cold, disciplined military machine of Rome and the wild, desperate ferocity of the freedom fighters. It is a tough, beautifully paced, and thoroughly uncompromising historical action film that perfectly captures the heavy analog cinematic style of the early 1960s. Number 4. Revolt of the Praetorians, 1964. This fierce Italian production, directed by Alfonso Brescia, focuses directly on the internal rot, paranoia, and absolute military brutality of the late Roman Empire. The story takes place during the terrifying reign of Emperor Domitian, a ruthless tyrant who relies on public executions, heavy taxes, and the sheer terror of his Praetorian Guard to keep the populace in check. If you want to show your audience the gritty, unpolished reality of how mid-century filmmakers tackled Rome without any digital help, this film is a goldmine. The entire production is built on heavy, physical textures, from the solid stone blocks of the imperial palace to the dust, sweat, and blood of the arena floor. The plot centers on a heroic, disguised Roman centurion who secretly organizes a massive underground slave rebellion and a military mutiny right under the emperor's nose. This setup provides a non-stop parade of heavy, physical action sequences. The combat choreography is remarkably rough and visceral, completely abandoning elegant Hollywood theatricality in favor of brutal shield slams, heavy iron swordplay, and desperate hand-to-hand brawls. Brescia uses tight framing and sweeping camera movements to capture the genuine danger of the stunts, featuring real horses charging through narrow stone streets and stuntmen taking massive unpadded falls during chaotic prison breaks. The film completely strips away the majestic aura of the empire, replacing it with a cynical, high-stakes atmosphere where freedom is bought with cold steel and survival is never guaranteed. It stands as a fast-paced, thoroughly entertaining testament to the power of pure, practical action cinema. Number 3. Demetrius and the Gladiators, 1954. This massive 20th Century Fox production, directed by Delmer Daves, is the absolute pinnacle of classic Hollywood's obsession with the arena, serves as a direct sequel to The Robe, and stands as one of the most influential gladiator movies ever made. The story follows a faithful Christian slave, Demetrius, who is forced into Rome's elite gladiatorial schools under the reign of the increasingly insane and sadistic Emperor Caligula. The physical scale of this film is staggering. The colossal, multi-tiered training arenas and the sprawling palace interiors were all built completely by hand on massive studio backlots, filling the frame with an authentic sense of weight and architectural grandeur. What makes this movie an essential addition to our list of raw epics is its surprisingly intense, violence, and highly provocative tone for 1954. The film doesn't shy away from the carnal temptations and absolute moral corruption of the Roman ruling class. It features intense, sweaty, and beautifully staged combat sequences where gladiators clash with various weapons, fight to the death on the dusty arena floor, and face off against real live tigers. The stunt work is incredibly precise and dangerous, with performers taking massive falls and engaging in heavy physical grapples that keep the audience on the edge of their seats. Daves masterfully balances a grand, dramatic narrative of faith and corruption with the brutal, unfiltered reality of a society built on blood sport. The vibrant CinemaScope presentation ensures that every splash of blood on the sand, every piece of heavy bronze armor, and every roar of the arena crowd feels completely immersive, cementing it as a timeless classic of practical filmmaking. Number 2. The Fall of the Roman Empire, 1964. This is the colossal giant that almost bankrupted 20th Century Fox, and when you watch it, you will immediately see where every single dollar went. Directed by Anthony Mann, this film represents the absolute peak and the tragic end of Hollywood's golden era of mega epics. The production value is so staggering it defies modern comprehension. To bring the heart of the empire to life, the filmmakers constructed a life-size replica of the Roman Forum on a massive 55-acre lot in Skane. It remains one of the largest physical outdoor film sets ever built in cinema history. Every single column, arch, and massive stone wall you see on screen is completely real, creating an overwhelming sense of physical weight and architectural grandeur that no digital rendering could ever hope to replicate. The narrative tracks the beginning of Rome's historical decay, starting with the death of the philosopher-emperor Marcus Aurelius and the subsequent rise of his unhinged, power-hungry son, Commodus. The film masterfully balances intense political scheming with breathtaking large-scale action. The battle sequences are legendary, utilizing thousands of real soldiers from the Spanish army to stage massive, sprawling conflicts in real winter snowstorms and across vast, dusty plains. From a terrifying high-speed chariot race through a dense forest to chaotic hand-to-hand combat, where hundreds of stuntmen clash with real iron weapons, the kinetic energy on display is absolutely wild. Man uses wide, sweeping lenses to let the viewer absorb the genuine, terrifying scale of total warfare. It is a monumental, beautifully shot masterpiece that serves as a heartbreaking reminder of what cinema used to be, when directors built entire worlds with wood, stone, and raw human effort. Number 1. Spartacus. This is the undisputed, crowning achievement of the entire genre, a cinematic colossus directed by Stanley Kubrick that set the gold standard for every Gladiator movie that followed. Spartacus is the ultimate definition of raw, practical filmmaking on a scale that will never be replicated. To bring the legendary slave revolt against the Roman Republic to life, the production utilized over 8,000 real soldiers from the Spanish army to act as extras in the climactic battle scenes. When you see the Roman legions forming their massive, terrifyingly disciplined infantry squares on the horizon, you are looking at a literal sea of thousands of real men moving in perfect, chilling unison across a physical landscape. The story follows the iconic Thracian slave, Spartacus, who was bought by a gladiator trainer and forced to fight for his life on the dusty sand of the arena for the amusement of corrupt Roman elites. After a brutal, bloody outbreak at the training school, he leads a massive, sweeping rebellion that grows into an army of runaway slaves, threatening the very foundations of Rome. The combat choreography is incredibly aggressive, heavy, and visceral. From the sweaty, close-quarters desperation of the initial gladiator duels to the catastrophic clash of armies featuring real rolling fireballs, the violence has a punishing, bone-shattering weight. Kubrick's legendary attention to detail ensures that the absolute cruelty, moral decay, and physical grit of the ancient world are captured with unflinching honesty. It is a monumental masterpiece of pure analog cinema, a film built on massive physical sets, genuine human danger, and an overwhelming scale that keeps you completely glued to the screen from the first frame to the tragic, unforgettable finale. That wraps up our journey through the dirt, blood, and massive physical scale of an era when cinema was truly real. No green screens, no digital armies, just pure, unfiltered human effort and massive historical grit. Every single one of these brutal Roman and medieval epics is waiting for you right now, completely free to stream on YouTube or Tubi. Don't wait around or put them in your watch later playlist. Licenses for these classic archives shift constantly, so load them up tonight before they vanish from the free rosters. Before you go, drop a comment below and let me know which of these practical masterpieces are you queuing up first. And if you know of another rare, forgotten epic that's currently streaming for free, share it with the rest of the archive in the comment section. If you appreciate honest filmmaking and love digging up these rare cinematic relics, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to 70 Cinema, and turn on notifications. We have a lot more deep dives into the vault coming your way very soon. Thank you for watching, stay brutal, and I'll see you in the next video.